Hello and welcome to the Haaretz Podcast. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer in Tel Aviv. In Israel, in the Gulf, across the Middle East, and around the world, attention is sharply focused on the Iran war. But still, some things don't stop for war, and one of them is the Academy Awards. It is quite remarkable that there are not one but two Israeli films nominated for an Oscar this year. Why? Because it hasn't been a very friendly year for Israel and Hollywood. In September, A-list stars were among more than 3,000 members of the movie-making industry who signed a pledge via Filmmakers for Palestine, calling for a boycott of Israeli film institutions, quote, complicit in the Gaza conflict. Those who argued against the petition pointed out that it is often Israeli cinema that gives voice to alternative narratives promoting the cause of ending violence. The short film Children No More were and are gone, nominated for an Oscar for Best Documentary Short, definitely falls into that category. The film tells the story of a vigil that began in March 2025 with just a handful of protesters standing silently in a public square in Tel Aviv, each holding a photo of a child killed in Gaza.
It's extremely necessary to show our care and what we want and what we believe in. And we have to show it by showing the pictures of these innocent children that are being killed, just as our innocent civilians were being massacred on October 7th. And this war just keeps going on only for political reasons, not for any reason other than that.
My guest on this podcast, the film's director and producer, Hilla Medalia, managed to make it onto a wartime flight so she can be at the Academy Awards ceremony in Los Angeles on Sunday. Before she left, Hilla joined me here in the studio at Haaretz to talk about how and why she made the film. Our conversation is coming up.
I'm Esther Solomon, Editor-in-Chief of Haaretz English. Around the world, the fight is on to preserve critical and independent media. Haaretz, Israel's oldest newspaper, upholds its long tradition of accurate, committed, and incisive journalism, refusing to bend its reporting to pressure from any government or leader. A digital subscription to Haaretz gives you up-to-the-minute news and analysis in English from journalists who live Israel's reality and are committed to covering the Middle East and its global repercussions.
Hilla Medalia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Hilla, your film, Children No More, follows a group of Israeli activists who, in March of 2025, after the second ceasefire between Israel and Hamas collapsed, reports emerging that 139 Palestinian children had been killed in IDF attacks in Gaza, these activists decided to take action. The film that you made about them is nominated for an Academy Award. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you're one of two Israeli nominees. Your film's nominated for Best Short Documentary, and Meyer Levinson-Blount's Butcher Stain is nominated for Best Live Action Short Film. That's pretty remarkable in a year where the film industry in Hollywood called for boycotts of Israel. There were petitions that were signed by many, many people. There are two nominees this year. Were you very surprised at the nomination?
Yeah, and I think it's incredible achievement for, of course, both Meyer and I, but also for our entire community. And it's very surprising, and also, show that good story, I hope, prevail.
Hilla, tell me the story of how this film was made. It was turned around in a really short time. The whole movement started less than a year ago. The protests that it documents began in March 2025. How did you start making the film?
I think in the past 2 years or plus, when the war was going on, I kept thinking, what's my role as a documentary filmmaker? What stories I need to tell? What's message I want to get out there? And when I first was exposed to this vigil, I was so moved by how a simple act could be so meaningful and the power of silence. It really struck me how this silence is louder than any scream. And we started, the crew of Nair and I, the DP and the sound, we would basically go week after week and film them. We started in June, and by September 23rd, it was already in theaters in LA, and November it was premiered at Dock and Wacy in New York, and December it was shortlisted, and January it was nominated. It was extremely fast track, a little bit opposite track of all the other films that are competing in this race, you know. Most of them premiered at Sundance, been in many festivals, Berlinale, Cannes. It all happened in our film so fast, partially because we really felt, once we started filming the vigil, we really felt the urgency of getting the film out there. So we literally filmed and edited concurrently and worked really fast. And we felt that we cannot wait, that we need to basically share for the local Israeli audience and to the world this story.
So these are activists. The concept is to stand in total silence during the Gaza war, holding pictures of the children that were killed in Gaza. Who were the people behind initiating this protest, which began sort of as a protest within a protest? They would stand at the big gatherings in support of the hostages, anti-government rallies, and so they were kind of a silent accompaniment to this other wider demonstration.
Right. So the wider demonstration was calling for the return of the hostage and against the government, but they were never talking about the cost of innocent civilians in Gaza. And in a way, these activists brought this voice of those children into the space. And what's so interesting about it, at least to me, is that they're not part of any organization. It's mainly women-led, no hierarchy. And it's incredible how it started really naturally, spontaneously, as a group of colleagues, activists, people who knew each other, were so shocked by the number of kids who were killed in one single day, 193. And they printed at home the photos of those kids, whatever they could find, and they went to the street and hold them. And that slowly grew into this bigger vigil that had more than 1,000 people. On each poster, there is a picture of a child, their name, their age, where they're from, the date that they were killed. That's it. No political slogan, no. And they stood in silence. And I think it's really incredible to see, and even when people are upset at them and it evokes a lot of emotion and even sometimes violence, they don't respond. And I remember when we filmed, I wanted to scream and I want to react, and they kept reminding me that they don't react and it's part of it. And it was incredible to see how powerful it is, even without any slogan and any screams. It's actually, the silence is so strong.
And it was such a contrast in the scenes where they did it in the demonstrations, because people were chanting, they were yelling, "Bring them home now." There was so much emotion. There was so much noise. People were trying to speak up and let their voices be heard. So the choice of a silent protest was very noticeable.
Yeah, and also within the film, we really try to create this silence and I think that one of the things, originally we thought to really stay within the vigil, but we realized that in order to feel this quietness, we need to also bring in the largest protest, so you can feel the contrast between the loud and the quietness of the vigil. When you come closer to them, even within the largest protest, when people walk through and reach the vigil, they stopped screaming and it was quiet. And I think that was really interesting.
So you said that the people who created the group, who initiated this, were not activists. They didn't belong to any organization. These were just individuals?
Well, some of them are part of different organizations, but the vigil itself is not part of any other organization. Some of the activists are very active in different organizations. The information comes, for example, from Adir Gov, who has been searching and publishing information about casualties and the violence in the West Bank in Gaza since 2020. So she is the one that researched and bring the names and the photos. And I think the other thing in the film, we try to really focus on the children and give the space for the children. There are very few scenes where we actually kind of cover the behind the scene of the organizing of the vigil. And one of them, for example, was a vigil where they decided to paint photos of like flowers for the kids that they cannot find pictures. Because one of the striking things that actually most of the children who were killed in Gaza do not even leave a photo behind.
And you can get photos of their dead bodies, but you can't get a photo of them when they were alive.
Right. And sometimes there is nothing also. So they wanted to commemorate the kids that they can't find photos. And they did this one vigil. And the reason why we kept that, for example, of kind of like the making and the behind the scene of the vigil, because first of all, it's important to understand that the large amount of children that were killed and there is not even a photo left. But also, I find it extremely interesting how actually seeing the photo of the kids when they're alive is so moving and so hard and heartbreaking. But when we just see flowers that the activists paint, it doesn't do the same effect. So I thought that's also very interesting about us, as the audience and as people, what moves us and what's not, and how numbers sometimes are so overwhelming. But when we see just a photo of a face of a child, it's so moving.
I remember when the protest started and I heard about it. First of all, as inspiring as this group is, we have to remember that the war started in October 2023 and nobody thought to hold protests focused on the loss of Palestinian Gazans for so long afterwards. So that was notable. So until they showed up, it seemed like there was a binary. There were Israelis who cared about the hostages and cared about the soldiers that were being lost. And then this group shows up and they care about the Gazans civilians. So what was the interaction like at these protests when your group, the group that you were making your film about, encountered the activists who were there for the hostages, who were there to call for the end of the war? Did it feel like they were all part of the same team, or did it feel like there was a division? And at some point, I remember in your film them saying that they felt like the police were trying to posit them against each other, that they were trying to divide them somehow physically or make it look like they were in different protests.
So when the vigil started, it created a lot of tension, even within the large protest, because I feel that we're not exposed to the images that the world is seeing of what's happening in Gaza. I mean, our media and journalists don't necessarily cover that to the extent that outside of Israel it's being covered. And also I feel there is so much trauma and pain, and it's very easy to deny. And they basically force even those people who are protesting against the government, against the war, for release of the hostages, they basically force them to look at the eyes of these kids. And some people, it slowly opened their heart. And sometimes I would see people walking by and like putting their hands on their chest and really moved. Some people even joined them. But even within this larger protest, some people were extremely upset.
Because it was an either or for them. Or you're protesting for the hostages, or you're protesting the killing of the Gazan children. It can't be both together.
I don't know. For some people, yes. But also I think for some people, it's showing this compassion and humanity. It was and still is extremely difficult. It's almost like feeling like that if we do that, we are denying the pain and the loss of what happened to us. And I think what the activists that are doing this vigil are saying that it's not. We can still feel the pain and hurt of what's happened on October 7th and feel the pain for every Israeli and everyone we know who suffered. But we can still feel compassion and the pain of the other, and it's extremely important to recognize. I think that's, it's a very Jewish thing to do. It's an important thing to do as, people. I mean, sometimes I feel we're in such a moral low now. I mean, in Israel, but also everywhere else in the world. And I feel that this is something that I love, that I look at these activists and how they're able to remember their humanity, and they're able to look at the pain and it what's happening in our name, and on one hand to protest it, but also to really this global humanity. It's such an important thing.
Was it difficult to also show the members of the public, especially when they went outside of the protests, when they would just hold the signs of the children in a park in Tel Aviv or on a street in Tel Aviv, not as a part of a demonstration, and encountered the general public? Some of the reactions to them were very extreme. People saying that they wanted to flatten Gaza, basically cheering the fact that these children had died. People saying, "You make me sick." Was it a difficult calculation how much of that to show and how much of that to put in the film?
First of all, it was difficult to witness that, because even though that, of course, I know the emotion and I understand the denial, I understand the difficult, and I see this divide within society, I think seeing how violence it could get over this disagreement was extremely difficult. And to see how for some people they seem like a betrayal, they're betraying us, was hard and shocking. And the activists have what they call peacekeepers. They have a group of activists who their job is kind of to protect the people who are participating in the vigil, but also engage in conversation with the people who are basically protesting or
yelling terrible things
to the protesters. And I think that was an incredible thing. We capture some of them in the film, and that creates an incredible conversation. And I think that that's also the power of silence. The silence allows a space for people who disagree with the protesters, and the protester made a point to engage in those conversations. And I think that was something that for me also show about how we are not able to listen to each other. We are not able to accept people who think elsewhere, how it's easy for us to scream and yell and to react when it's so painful and difficult. And when we premiere a doc and we see two of the activists joined us, and someone at the audience asked them about that divide and that scream, and how do they handle when people within their closest circle don't agree with them. And it was right after the Mamdani election, and I think New York City had this divide. And it was really interesting to hear the activists talking about how, just like in the vigil, they're trying within their close circle to not react, and hoping that way people can listen to them, and hopefully there'll be some kind of a political aura of the closest people to them.
And all of these conflicts, the people in the general public who just walked up to them and were hostile, this was like within the peaceful Tel Aviv bubble where everybody's supposed to lean left. Imagine if they had been outside of Tel Aviv.
Sure. The vigil started in Tel Aviv, but also it grew. Some of, I think, Standing Together has been adopting it. Some other places, there have been people who standing with those pictures outside of military base, of especially Air Force. So they did go outside. So it grew a little bit outside of Tel Aviv, and I think outside of Tel Aviv, they got even more hostile reactions. And also, by the way, the vigil is happening also outside of Israel. I met people who were standing in and doing the vigil in Los Angeles, in New York, and in London, and I think also in other places.
It's a different message, though, when it's happening outside Israel and when it's happening inside Israel, inside the country that's at war.
For sure.
As a journalist, I just can't help noticing, ironically, that, the big protests, that the silent protests really weren't the factors that changed the government's mind and ended the war. Of all people, it was U.S. President Donald Trump that actually stopped the killing of these Gazan children.
I mean, I think that there has been protest in Israel for even before the war. I actually feel that this protest is extremely important. And I really feel that when I look at those activists, and I feel there is a power of a group and there is a power of the people, and every little thing that we can do actually help the bigger goal. And I actually get a lot of inspiration for them to do what we can. I think if every person will do what they can, there will be change. And I think we need to remember that and do things, because it's really easy to sit at home and to say, oh, it's so bad, and not do anything. And, I look at these women, mostly women, and some of them are so young. They have work and life and things, and they still find the time the energy, and they keep doing a lot of things. And I feel it's extremely important and inspiring.
One of the comments in the film from one of the activists is that it's going to take generations for Israelis to really understand what we did in Gaza, what happened in Gaza, and the scale of the killing and, in their words, war crimes that happened in Gaza. Do you agree that we haven't really understood what happened there?
Yeah, I agree with that we haven't understood. We really need to look at the reality in the face and understand what happened and learn. But, right now we are fighting over doing an investigation about what happened on October 7 or not. So, that hasn't been done yet. So I think there is a lot. And again, it's hard, it's painful, but we need to be able to look at what happened. And also, I think that speaking truth to power is extremely important concept.
Another really powerful line that I remember from the film was, we view ourselves, Jewish Israelis, as being good, moral people. And when reality clashes with that image, there's deep denial. So do you think the Israeli public is still in denial about what happened? And is the film sort of pushing them to look that reality in the face?
I hope so. I mean, people need to see it. The good thing about being nominated for Academy Award is that more people are interested in seeing it. And also, it gives a reason for a short film to be distributed. So in the U.S., it's actually been released theatrically in 354 theaters across the country, which is incredible and would not have happened if we weren't nominated. In the UK and Ireland, it's on Sky. And here, we were supposed to have a lot of screenings this weeks, and unfortunately...
Another war interfered with your documentary about the previous war, unless I guess you can consider what's going on now with Iran, a continuation of that war.
Yeah, exactly. I do hope that a lot of people see it, and we can...
And we live in an era of streaming platforms that eventually it will presumably get distributed globally that way.
Hopefully. I mean, one of the producers of the film, Hilla Medalia, who is a legendary documentary producer and commissioner, she was talking actually this week to Matt Carey at Deadline, and she spoke about the fact that she is very doubtful that the American buyers will be able to show this film because they are really trying to avoid anything political or anything that might upset anyone, but I hope she's wrong, and hopefully it will also find a house there and also in Israel.
Well, it will certainly be a transition for you going from the bomb shelters here to the glitz and glamour of the Academy Awards, won't it?
Yes. I mean, it's really, I mean, documentary, it's so far away from, who we are and what we do. But again, for me, it's, first of all, honor, but also it's just really a great opportunity for the film and the message to reach a much wider audience.
Hilla Medalia, director producer of Children No More. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this episode of the Haaretz Podcast. Thanks to my guest, Hilla Medalia, and producer and editor, Adi Shacham. If you'd like to continue to listen to our podcast and make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And leave us a 5-star rating, and that way more people can find us. And to keep up with all of the latest updates on the Iran war, along with all the news on Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world, don't forget to subscribe to and follow Haaretz.com. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer, and until next time, shalom from Tel Aviv.